So it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Consolee Nishimwe.
Coming here, it's almost coming home. So for me, I'm truly honored to be here, especially today. This is the first week we commemorating 29th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It starts April 7th. So right now, so it's like in the beginning. So as you can imagine, as a survivor, it's like you are reliving everything that you've gone through. So it's like a period where you are reliving everything you've gone through at that time. So for me, when I was coming here, I was thinking like where I was and how things changed, right away. So how life changed and how we were forced to leave our home. So, and it was a little bit, like emotional. Every year is different. So, but the month of April is very emotional for a lot of survivors. So, because every person, all of us, whenever we call each other, whenever we are talking to each other, everybody has a date of something happened when they left home, when their homes were burnt, when something really horrible happened. So it's like a life, we live with this for the rest of our lives. So, but at the same time, every year we encourage each other because survivors are still struggling with the trauma, even though it's 29 years, but still, some of them still struggle, some of them still because we have many survivors who have lost the entire families. So, and some of them left alone. So, and some of them who are not even able to even adjust even 29 years. So they are not able to even function. So some of them who passed away because of the trauma of what they have endured during the genocide. So every time I share my story, I feel like also thinking about those who will not be able to share their stories because a lot of them don't even share. We are very few of us. That's why we really appreciate a lot what Change and Dell has done to us because opening a platform to be able to share our stories really has helped me very much for me to even heal because writing my story, sharing my story has helped a lot in so many ways. Not only for me, for those I have survived in my family, my mom, my sister. It really helped a lot to be able to see that I can leave, I'm here for a lot of them who cannot share their stories. So it's very, the reason why I'm sharing this before I share a little bit of my story is because I feel, it's something that I feel like I'm reliving right now. So I can understand what, every survivor is going through right now. So yes, if you can, please, would you allow me to take at least 1 minute of silence to remember those we've lost in 1994? Yeah, maybe 1 minute of, yes, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Um, in 1994, like what they just said, I was 14 years old. I was a very young teenager, happily living with my both parents who were teachers. For those of you who don't know what, how Rwanda, was before, maybe a little bit of history. Before Rwanda was a monarchy system before the Belgian came in the country. So, and at that time, during the monarchy system, we had what they call social classes, Tutsis, Hutus, and Twa, which were social classes. If you were Tutsi, that means you had many cows, so you're a wealthy person. So, and a lot of the, people tried, to move from one class to another. So until everything changed when we were colonized by first German and then the Belgian took over, so they had to switch everything into ethnicity. So now they had to do what they call divide and conquer. So they had to change the whole system, and they issue the ID cards. That ID card, now you had, what they call Hutu and Tutsi as ethnicity. So they would say, oh, Tutsis look a certain way. There's a photo of measuring a nose. I'm sure we have that in exhibition, how a man was being measured, by his nose to see, how he looks. So they used to say Tutsis look almost like Europeans, and they had a certain way they would say a Hutu looks and a Tutsi looks. So, and after that they issued the ID card. That ID card became almost like especially for Tutsis who now had to make them against Hutus. The Hutus became majority by the time the Belgium left the country. So when they left the country, now those who were in a part, the Hutus, started discriminating against Tutsis. So now the Tutsis were a minority. Every time since 1959, there were Tutsis who left the country in exile because of persecution and discrimination. Some of them who were killed. So, and then 1960s, there are some of them who left the country also. And then 1973, there were some Tutsis who left the country and they were killed as well, some of them. So, but it was not to the scale of 1994, because those of my family and many Tutsis who remain in the country, some of them, now they kept persecuting them. I was born in a time when being a Tutsi was not easy. You had to learn how to live a life where there are certain things you were not allowed to do. My parents, even though my parents were able to go to school, which was not easy at that time, being a Tutsi, but they were not able to even do, college or university. But what they were able to do allowed them to do the job they were doing. So my parents were teachers. And luckily, because they were teachers, I was able to be born in a family at the time which was good for me. At least they could take care of me and my siblings. So when I was born, I was the oldest in my family, and I had a sister who was 11 years old around 1994, and then also I had my 3 younger brothers who were ages 9, 7, and 16 months old. So. And I remember, for me, even though we were going through persecution and all the discrimination against the Tutsi at that time, I felt loved by my parents. The affection of my parents, it really helped me a lot to grow up in being a kid, feeling loved and cared for. But at the same time, whenever I went to school, I had to face discrimination because I was a Tutsi. So I remember. When we were in elementary school, we were asked to stand up as a Tutsis. So because they want to count how many Tutsis, Hutus in the classroom, but at the same time, they made sure, because there were few Tutsis in the classroom, so you feel a little uncomfortable. But we were kids, but at the same time, we went back to our normal lives. So, and when I was in junior high school, that's when I felt, being a Tutsi, what he was. So. When I was persecuted, actually I was bullied by a classmate who was a Hutu. So, and it was not easy as a kid at that time, and it was in a time when there was so much tension in the country, and because many Tutsis were being killed in some areas, because 1992 also there are some areas, you hear Tutsis were being killed in 1991. And for me, what I did, I just, my parents have told me how to behave, how to be, to behave nice. So I knew how to behave nice. So, and luckily that worked. So I was able to, continue my classes and like every other kid. So it was not easy. It was close to 1994 at that time. So, and then we went to Easter holiday vacation. Everything changed. Immediately, everything changed. That's when April 7th, after the former president, April 6th, the night of April 6th, when his plane was shut down. So now they use as a way of saying, oh, Tutsis killed him, but which was not right, because the genocide was well planned, and they already had weapons, and the propaganda of hatred was being spread out at that time. And there was RTLM radio, which was spreading the hatred against the Tutsi. And the person, actually the founder of that radio now, is facing justice right now. The man, Kabuga Felicien, is facing a trial right now. He's around 80 years old. He was living in France. So, and he's one of those people who actually founded that RTLM radio, and is the one who helped to import machetes in the country. So I remember in my area when I was growing up as a kid, there was this man who was living in the community there. So he used to make these wood thick with nails on top. Every time people would buy them, but we never knew what it was. So that shows you how the genocide was well planned. So because during the genocide, those weapons were used, and a lot of people had those weapons. So it was like a big wood thick, with nails on top. They used to use it to hit on the head or whatever they could do with the machete. They used to carry it together with the machete. So, and that's why the genocide was well planned. Throughout the years of propaganda, using the hate radio, RTLM to spread the hatred against the Tutsi, using discrimination words like calling us, we are cockroaches and snakes. I'm sure many of you have seen 10 stages of the genocide when they describe from the first to the beginning. So, and everything we had to go through in Rwanda. So right now we are facing what they call the 10th one is denial. So that's another one we are facing right now. It's almost like anti-Semitism. So, and it was so hard, even as a young person, for me to see how people were supposed to be for us, but they planned something to exterminate, people who are humans like them simply because of who we were. So, and the way in Rwanda it happened, because they had to teach this propaganda, to the people who are neighbors, people who we went to the same church, like my parents have taught their kids, and these are the people we knew very well. There was no stranger. For me, every person who has done something horrible during the genocide was not a stranger to us. So I remember April 7th, all of us leaving our home and immediately going into hiding. For those 3 months, we never knew it was going to be 3 months. We never knew who was going to survive. We never knew how things were going to be. So, and these days we were running, going to seek refuge in people's homes who were Hutus, and some of our friends, some of them we knew very well. So, and sometimes, being a teenager, every time I think about it, especially during this time, I thought maybe it was going to be a few days and then we go back to our home. But things have changed completely. So now throughout the country, through that radio, they kept telling, Hutus, go find them, even little boys, even a kid, just everybody you find, just kill them. So immediately they started burning homes. They started destroying everything belonging to Tutsi, and now we had to run, going into hiding. So, and during the genocide, usually even before in 1959, people used to go hide in the churches, hoping that nobody would find them, nobody would kill them there. So a lot of people run in churches. They run in holy. Saying when you go to a holy place, nobody will find you and kill you there. So, and that was not the case in the genocide. A lot of Tutsis were murdered in churches. Now you find memorials. If you go in the exhibition, you will learn more about some churches that Tutsis were killed, and in the most horrific way. Some of them, now, right now, whenever you visit Rwanda, you find clothes and you find, so many things that were belonging to people who were hiding in there. So I have friends who escaped from the churches, barely escaped, and some of them who have scars on their body and lost their arms. So it was not easy. And for me and my family, where we lived in the western province of the country, we had to go to people's homes. So I remember the first time we went to this household of people who were good friends of our family. And my parents, I remember, because the first time we went there, we were meeting a crowds of people on the street. I remember that first time we were trying to go to the stadium, seeking refuge in the stadium. And as we followed the crowd, my parents, especially my mom, instincts told her to never keep going to the stadium. So, and a lot of people in that group, so many people were going to that stadium. Majority of people were killed. And there's a memorial there. So, and we went to the home of a good friend of our family. They were, good friends of our family, and they hid us in their home. But somehow during the genocide, you never knew how people changed. So they didn't keep us for a long time. And now the day they told us to leave, we had to go through the bushes in the night, and trying to figure out somewhere else to go. And it was around April 15, early in that morning, when we were hiding in the bushes, so close to the river. And they were killers because the way they did the genocide, actually, they had to have roadblocks everywhere. So, and what they did, they had to get up in the morning. There was nothing else working in the country. So everything was just those who allowed themselves to commit the genocide. They woke up every morning and went to kill people. So it was so horrifying to see there was nothing else happening. So they woke up in the morning and they picked up their machetes and they started searching everywhere, whoever they could find and to kill. So, and I remember that morning when they were searching around in the bushes, and we were sitting there, and my dad, my mom, my siblings, and one of my dad's sister was with us at that time. As they were searching there, my mom kept telling all of us to pray, keep praying, keep praying. So, and as a kid, I was I was a daddy's girl, so I was very close to my dad. And to see the way he looked and afraid and not being able to do anything, it's one of those images that will never leave my mind, and it's hard for me every time I think about it. This is a man that I thought was going to protect me, but now he's afraid because they are going to kill him. So it was hard for me. So it's really hard even now to think about it. So, and my mom kept telling all of us to pray and taught us to remain together. Whatever happened, at least it will happen all of us together at the same time. So as we coming out in those bushes, it was close to a river, and the killers surrounded us immediately. And my aunt, who was afraid and shaking, somehow she couldn't be able to stand there, so she ran and she was murdered not too far. But I didn't see it with my eyes, but my siblings saw what happened. So, and the rest of us who were together, they took my dad's money, they took everything, whatever we had, and now we had to figure. It was early in the morning. Now we had to figure somewhere else to go. So now the killers were all over the place. In the hills, they were chanting, calling. We found the Tutsis, whatever. And as we were trying to figure out somewhere else to go, climbing the hills, if you go in Rwanda, you find it's a hilly country. So they call it a country of 1,000 hills. And as we were trying to reach, of course, where we lived, it was in a village. It wasn't like a big city. So as we were trying to reach to our home, when my dad was carrying my younger brother, who was 16 months old, the one, I'm sure you will see that in the photo. So that photo, actually, we took it, remember what it is. We took it, it will come. That photo, we took it a few months before the genocide happened. It was a few months before the genocide. For some reason, my mom, the way we took it, it wasn't like a planned photo to take. Somehow it happened, we took it, and the person who took that photo kept it. And that's how we're able to find that photo. So, and now that's the only photo I have with me and my siblings. So, the younger one, who was 16 months old, my dad was carrying him, and the rest of us were behind him. And as we reached to this home, the young lady and the people were sitting outside, because at that time, even people who were not committing the genocide physically, some of them were calling, and others were there to help if they could help. And there was this young lady, my dad taught her in school before, and she decided to pull my younger brother from him. And then she said, follow me in the house. So, and my dad decided to run in different direction, and the killers decided to follow him. The rest of us were together. We went in the house, and we were afraid what would happen to our dad, and we were praying in the ceiling of the house. I tried in my book to describe how we climbed the ceiling in the house, and because the homes are built differently from here, so it's almost like attic. So here, so and we went there. We sat there. It was not easy. My mom comforting all of us, and then I was afraid what would happen to our dad. But later on that evening, because killers, every time they finish murdering Tutsis, they would be tired, they would be gathering outside and talking, and because in that house they had a small bar, and they were drinking beer, rewarding themselves. And I remember I never thought I was going to hear these people saying they have murdered my dad. My dad who taught their kids, my dad was a very gentle human being, so very kind. He was my dad, but he was a very, very kind person. So, it was very tough. It was very tough to hear that. We cried together, me and my mom, and it was not easy. But we didn't know we were going to survive. It was that day my aunt was killed, and then later on that evening, my dad was murdered. So it was not easy. And the way I learned later on how he was tortured, it was horrifying. It's terrible. And we kept crying. We didn't know what else to do. My mom, of course, now had to figure out how to take me and my siblings, who to knock on doors. It was not an easy time. During those 3 months, she took us in many homes of people, some of them who called killers, some others refused to help, some others even said some horrifying things. And there were instances where someone tried to kill us, and with a machete, and who was a neighbor, someone we knew very well, and begging not to be killed. So those images really are hard for me to get rid of in my head. So, and my mom, who was carrying my younger brother now on her back, every time we had to go through the bushes, it was rainy season, and we hear noises and cries. And there were times we found in hiding, I saw a young lady now who lives in South Africa. She was cut with a machete and bleeding, and her mother was killed. And now luckily I found that she was alive. She's alive now. She lives in South Africa and married now. So thank God she's alive. So, and many horrible things we have seen during that time. I remember one instance where we knocked on door of this, since we are here in school, there were many, many instances happen. I can mention one of them. We knocked on door of this home. My mom was thinking, what can I take my children? They are hungry. Our feet were swollen and soak wet because of the rainy season. And it was very tough for my mom. We lost our shoes. We have nothing. And my younger brother was 16 months old, crying and saying, I want to be home. And we didn't know what to do. So, and every time we tried to comfort him, to keep him quiet so people won't hear us. So, And I remember this time we went to knock on door of this home. The woman was part of the killing and the husband. At that time in the night when we knocked on door, the kids were in the household and the mother and the husband was at roadblocks. So because there were people who had the roadblocks, they had to switch in the night and be at the roadblocks. And as we were begging, my mom knocking on door, begging to be in the house, and luckily the kids, my mom have taught them in school, and they begged their mother and cried. They say, "Mom, help our teacher, please, please." And that's how we're able to go in the house. So because of the children, now the children are very, very good friends of my mom, even now. So I'm truly grateful for them. So they didn't follow what they heard. So, and they were kind, and I'm truly grateful for them. So, and we entered the house. At least we're able to lay down a little bit and eat something because of those children. So they are no longer children, they are grown and married. So, and that was one time. And I remember another time we went to this home of people my mom thought maybe they were good friends of our family for so long. And as we were going through the bushes, every time we had to avoid going to the road because there were roadblocks everywhere. So as we knocked on their door, back door, coming through the back doors, and it was early in the morning, the men in the house, everybody in the house heard us. So, and the man came outside. He was wearing a towel around his waist and with a small drum in his hand. And the wife remained in the house, and even the kids didn't come out. So there was a man who was standing outside who had a club and a machete and ready to do something. You could see he has murdered a lot of people, so in his face. And as the man came outside, instead of looking at us and my mom and say hi and all that, so, and trying to help, so he started calling using the drum and calling other killers because where he lived, he was facing a high school, and they had roadblocks. They had many people there who have murdered, so who were murderers. So as he was trying to call them, luckily no one paid attention. So, and we begged. My mom begged, and he went back in the house because he was so mad. And then we tried to leave because that man who was supposed to do something, he told us, to me it was a miracle. He said, just leave, leave, leave. And that's how we left. It was so miraculous because he could have done something horrible. So, and my mom was wondering, who is going to be kind? Who is going to help? So, and I remember another time because of many, many instances. So I remember another time we were discovered by killers where we're hiding in the home of somebody who hid us in his home. A very poor man. He didn't have much, but he hid us in his home. And the killers found us there. So they decided to take my mom. It was a group of killers, and they decided to take my mom and my younger brothers. So my younger brother, the rest of us kids, will remain there because they were hoping my mom could take them to where we lived, to a neighbor, because before we left our home, my parents left a key to a neighbor to rescue some of the things in our home. And because we were very good friends, so my mom hoped by going there, they are going to help. So, and the young man in that household was going to a university, was studying at the university by the time the genocide happened. So, and my mom, because that young man, his parents were not able to afford high school at that time, and my parents helped him, to go to school. So my mom hoped, this is a person, considered this person as a son. So she was hoping he would help. So by the time she got there, with a bunch of killers behind her, with my younger brother on her back, and of course, me and my siblings were wondering what happened to our mom, and I was praying. I didn't know what to do. I was still young. A 14-year-old was very, very young. So, and that man who was hiding us, me and my siblings, told me to go find our mom Now it was during the day. We had to go through the bushes. We didn't know if our mom was still alive. Luckily, throughout the day, we tried to go through the bushes and hiding, avoiding to go on the street. So later that evening, it was a little bit dark, so it was dark. So we had to reach to our home where this family took us in, and they had a fire around us. They gave us food, and they were very, very kind. So they started telling us what happened to our mom. So they say your mom actually was taken by this group of killers everywhere because the neighbor refused to help your mom. And now they had to decide to leave her to another neighbor. Whenever they want, they will kill her. So, and I told them we had to go find her where she is. Whatever happened, at least we'll all be together. So, and my mom didn't know we were still alive. So even the time before we reached there were times during the day before we reached to that home, we were hiding in the bushes and the killers were searching us. So, and I remember telling my siblings to sit in the middle of the trees. It was very much like, it wasn't like very much hidden by God hid us. And they were passing like close to us. I could see them. We were just being quiet, and it was very terrifying because they were searching for us. And I remember when we reached to this home, and my mom was so surprised to see that we were still alive, and she was praying and cried and to see us again. And we now we remained together in that home. It was old men. It was old men houses, so it was like a very few distance to our already destroyed home. So, and this man took us in his home. He didn't know what else to do. He was living close to the road. So that means every killer, every person knew where we were now. So now they plan to kill my brothers. So when the plan happened, it was around in May. And because of the the way the genocide happened, even little boys who are still alive, it's almost as if they've never done anything. So, and they planned to kill my brothers. And one of the people who came to take my brothers was somebody who grew up with my mom. Yesterday, I think it was during the night, no, yesterday it was around 6 or 5. I was reading in my phone, I was reading a letter that young man wrote to my mom when he was in prison, asking for forgiveness of how he murdered my brothers. It was so hard for me to read it again, so I put it in my book. So, and this young man, not only they were neighbors of my mom when she was growing up, they were very close. When I used to go to my grandmother, I thought they were part of our family. So these are my 3 brothers. Every time he was always on my mom's back or sometimes on her chest. And these 2 ones, Pascal and Philbert, they were very, very brave and strong. And Pascal, every time he would comfort us, he became almost like a little grown man, you know, like he kept saying, oh, be strong, be strong. And sometimes I would feel like he was a little bit grown than me. So, when this man came to take my brothers with others, so they snatched away my younger brother, this one, from my mom. And before they took them, my mom took us in the room. We were praying, whatever happens, at least we all, go to heaven. And when this little boy, Bonfils, was snatched away, my 2 younger brothers took him and held his hands. And they said they are going to join Daddy in heaven. And it was not very easy to see my brothers being taken like sheep, and it was hard. It was really hard, especially for my mom, who was seeing her little boys being taken like that. And as you can imagine how the scene was, when all of us were begging to be taken and they refused, they took them. So they took them to an already destroyed home, and they slaughtered them and threw their bodies in septic tank of our home. And it was very tough that day. And we begged to be killed. We begged to be killed, but they refused. And but somehow when you survive, things keep happening. So we didn't want to hide anymore, but somehow we found ourselves finding ourselves in another place and another home. And I remember that home we were at that time, because sometimes it was very hard to find a home where you will not find somebody in that home who is not committing the genocide. Someone will hide you, a wife will hide you, but the husband will be committing the genocide. So, and the wife took us in. She was very, very kind. But the husband was part of the killing. When he came back, he was with a neighbor who was a killer. So, who was carrying a machete, who was carrying a sword at that time. So, and this man was a neighbor that I knew very well. No one did something that I didn't know. So, and he decided to pull me from my mom and my sister. All of us begged not to be taken. So, to be taken. My mom said, don't take my daughter alone. If you want to kill all of us. So we didn't have so much strength to protect ourselves. So unfortunately, I was taken by this man, not too far from our home, dragged by him and beaten, with the sword. He was using a back of the sword. And it was hard for me to protect myself. I was, unfortunately, I was taken not too far from our home and was raped by him. During the genocide, rape was used as a weapon. And a lot of women, I'm sure you hear a lot happen in the conflicts and where the genocide happened, or war, or any other place. Mostly women are the most targeted. So they get raped, even young men, young boys too, so they get raped. So this man was somebody that I knew very well. He hoped other killers would come and destroy me more. And but somehow, by the grace of God, I was able to take myself out of that place. But even though I just needed to meet somebody on the street and kill me, it was not easy. And my mom has to face me and see how I looked, which was not easy for a parent, as you can imagine, a mother to see a daughter looking how I looked at that time. Every time I even think about it, I always think about my mother, what she felt in her heart. As a parent herself, not too long ago, she lost her beloved children, and now she sees what happened to me. So it's always hard every time I think about it. So, but somehow maybe God wanted me to be alive so that I can tell you what happened. So because many of my fellow survivors still struggle to talk about this. This is one of the part many survivors struggle to talk about. So, and somehow, because we kept hiding, it was all those 3 months, and someone in a Muslim community took us in, and that's how we're able to survive, me and my mom. And this young man has helped, survivors and some people who survived. And he's one of those people who was so kind enough to never participate in the genocide. I feel sad he's no longer alive, that I can, my mom will always feel sad, because we could do something for him to appreciate the kind of, his heart and the kind of person he was. And the last, few weeks, he was able to be with us and protect me and my mom and my sister. And that's how we're able to survive. And of course, the country was liberated by RPF, and the genocide ended. We're able to meet, those who rescued us and stop the genocide. So, and now surviving was me, my mom, in our household, me, my mom, and my sister. My 3 brothers were killed, my dad. On my dad's side, almost everybody was killed. On my mom's side, at least I have a few people who survived, a few cousins, and my aunt, my mom's older sister, who have gone through so much. Every person who survived in my family, I've gone through a lot. I'm the only person, two of us actually, who are strong enough to even share our stories. My mom always tells me that she appreciates that I was able to have the strength to share this because it helped her to heal. To be able to heal and begin her healing journey. So my mom now, she had to go back to teach, the kids of the people who have done horrible things, the people, those kids who are same age as her children, my brothers, because she was teaching 4th grade. And recently she told me that one of the things that makes her happy is that every kid she taught, many of them, she's a friend of them. She said, I'm so happy that they are my friends. I'm so happy that, I was able to do my job well, however I could, despite the pain. And she just showed them love instead of projecting her pain. And I don't know how she managed. Every time I think about that, I'm amazed. Because even fellow teachers always were afraid of what she would do. So, but she showed them that she's not bitter. So even though she was carrying the pain, you could see her pain, but still she had love. So in her heart. So that's one of the things I learned from her, to love despite the pain, to not allow the pain to make me bitter. And that you can be kind even though you carry the pain within yourself. So my mom, I'm so grateful. She survived because I've learned so much from her. And also because of the genocide, so many consequences of survivors live with the trauma. Some of them, women and girls who were raped, live with bigger consequences, not only psychological trauma, but they also have had children from rape. Others live with HIV as a result of what happened to them. So, and for me, later on finding out that I was HIV positive as a result of what I've endured was very hard for me. Now I had something that reminds me every day of what I've gone through. It was so painful, but, and I was young, and I needed to have a life like everybody else. And my teenage life was robbed away from me, my youth. Now I have that pain, the constant reminder. And every time I remember when I was back in school, it was just a constant reminder, nightmares, all the things that I've gone through. But thankfully, because of having a mom who constantly, being around me, she helped me through that journey, and I was able to do school well. I was able to manage well and be able to never give up, continue to hold on life. And that carried me through when I also found out that I was HIV positive, and I kept telling myself that my friends lost the entire families. I'm one of the fortunate. At least I can lay on my mom's shoulder and cry. And when so many didn't have that opportunity to have those parents around them, and I kept reminding myself how fortunate I am, and also to be here, where I was able to go to therapy. Many of them didn't get a chance to go to therapy. And going to therapy and having a good doctor who constantly reminded me that I'm here for a reason and I have to love myself. And that really helped me to journal, started journaling every painful things that I've gone through. So, and made friends, kind people. I have many good friends who are so kind and helped me to love myself. And I've met incredible people in my life. So, really, I'm very fortunate. And I felt like I needed to be there for my fellow survivors. I needed to be a voice. I needed to do something to help them love themselves again. So because of that, constantly, even my faith in God really became, stronger as I was going through therapy and all that. Now I was able to appreciate God and even, learn to appreciate my being here, my existence here. So, and every day now it was a gradual journey. It didn't come overnight. It was a gradual journey. And now I had to share with my mom every step of what I was feeling within myself. But I didn't realize how much it was going to help her. My mom now, we became almost like it's almost like a group therapy together. So one time she said to me, I used to have a migraine. That was a constant migraine, but she never told me anything about it. But then one day she said, now it's no longer there. I don't have it anymore. It disappeared. And she started not being ashamed of what we've gone through or what I've gone through, especially what I've gone through. And we did together, this journey together. And she was so, she encouraged me. We encourage each other. My sister as well, my sister who still go through her own, every person has their own journey of accepting what happened. But truly grateful that we had each other because many of them didn't have each other. So my aunt too, who lives with my mom, thankfully, they accept to live together, and that helped a lot. So that helped a lot because at least my aunt, who's the most beautiful human being, she became like a mom to us too. So helping my mom, and she never had children, but we are her children. So, at least she felt confident and loved. I'm grateful. And now, for me, even writing my story has helped me a lot to relieve, to release the burden that I was carrying on my shoulder. And it has helped a lot of my fellow survivors. Some of them have been able to open up because of what I did. So, and now they are starting to write their story. Some of them who have gone through what I've gone through as a woman, they are sharing their stories. So to me, I always say that, I'm so grateful every time I get up in the morning, so that I'm here, I'm alive. So I'm no longer seeing myself that I'm defined by what happened to me. I'm not, seeing myself as a woman who carries HIV within my body anymore. So, and every time I even take every day my pill, I no longer see it as a threat anymore because of what I told, because of therapy and the things that I've, told my mind. So I feel like, I deserve to be happy. So, and that time of my youth robbed from me, somehow now I had to, I started reconnecting with my 14-year-old self, which was far away. I was that happy girl, but then I needed to bring that joy again in my heart and to reconnect to that girl, that young girl. So, and luckily I was able to reconnect with her. It took me many years, but I connected with her now. And I'm always, I'm happy. Somehow I'm, happy with small things in life. And I'm very appreciative every day. So, and I know I will never forget everything that happened to me. There are things that come in my mind, of the things I've gone through. But at the same time, I'm no longer like feeling like I'm what happened to me. So I'm no longer thinking like that. So I have a positive outlook on life, and I feel like I'm here for a reason on behalf of so many survivors, sharing their story, making sure what happened is not forgotten. So that's why we are here. That's why we commemorate. So I want to continue, at least for whatever small, thing I can do in my life to make sure contribution I can make to make at least, making sure that the memory is still alive, not only for my family, for those who are no longer here. So, but one of the things I always share, my message I always share with people is that no matter what horrible circumstances you may face in your life, never lose hope. For losing hope is the beginning of your own self-defeat. Right after the genocide, there were many perpetrators who committed the genocide. So because we didn't have enough courts or system to trial these perpetrators, so they had to create a system that was actually a traditional system. Gacaca used to reconcile people in the community who have dispute about a land or something, they had to use that system to trial the genocidaires, those who committed the genocide in the community. So it's called gacaca. That means sitting on the grass, and it was a system that they didn't know how it was going to work. So now the community, those who committed the genocide, and the community around, and the survivors, they had to meet together. But of course, there were people in the community who were trained to be lawyers, to be judges. So the way they did it in a traditional way. Now for the perpetrators to come forward and share, some of them admit what they have done. Others, telling the survivors what they have done to them, their families, those who have lost their families, and they show where they threw the bodies, because many of the bodies were thrown in many different ways. So many of us survivors didn't bury our loved ones. So the people that I buried in my family were my brothers, but my father, nowhere to be found to be buried. His remains, there survive many survivors who don't have, even now, who still find the remain of their loved ones. So, and at least Gacaca, what it did, it helped those who committed the genocide to, some of them to ask for forgiveness, others to show where they put the bodies of, the families, so that they can give them a decent burial. So to me, it was very hard, but at the same time, it helped a lot because it has trialed many, many cases compared to international court we had in Arusha, Tanzania, ICTR, which tried many, very, very few cases. But mostly they were doing, masterminds who committed the genocide. So, but in Rwanda, Gacaca really tried so many cases. So to me, it helped in so many ways to, for the people to find their remains of their loved ones, and also for those who wanted to ask for forgiveness, to ask for forgiveness to survivors, including the person who murdered my brothers. He was actually in a Gacaca. That's how I was able to write that letter to my mom, asking for forgiveness, so, of what he did to our family. So because he murdered a lot of people, sometimes, during the trials, the Gacaca trial, so because we don't have a death sentence in Rwanda, so they get life sentence, or they get life imprisonment, or they will get some time in prison. But because of those who apologize, they will get some time in prison, but come out and do the community service to show how remorseful they were. And so many of them came out of prison. So, but it was not easy for survivors, again, to see someone walking around. But because of how things were supposed to do, the government wanted to reunite people, to reconcile. It was a process, but it was not easy. But somehow people we came back together because these were neighbors. Again, we were going to live next to each other again. They had to do whatever they could to make sure we come back to normal life and live in a society together, and no longer having this discrimination. And of course, they had to let our ID card that shows Hutu and Tutsi. Now we have only ID card that shows we are all Rwandans. So now they had to educate, people throughout the country, having memorials all over the country, making sure that people learn what happened, and facing, perpetrators. Of course, there's so many in the country at that time, but the country was inherited a lot. So to be able, survivors who are heartbroken, even perpetrators, because when I was in high school, the kids of my age, coming from the families who committed the genocide, some of them were going through also trauma because of what they have to see. They were kids. So it was not easy. It was not easy, but at the same time, they managed to make sure, we all live together, we go back to school, we have normal lives. And now, actually, it worked so well because the country has thrived a lot in so many areas. But whenever you visit the country, you see memorials. That's the only thing that will show you that we had a genocide. So, and of course, survivors still live with the trauma and all that, but in so many ways the country has managed to move forward. So, and I encourage everybody to go, one time when Dell goes, all of us together, definitely I encourage everybody to visit. We have really, the country has really done a lot compared to places where they had a genocide. Really, I'm amazed of so many survivors. I'm amazed of how others were able to, to behave, even though it's not easy. Right after the genocide, of course, the government had to do whatever they could. All survivors, almost everybody, lost their homes. So what they had to do, they had to start having funds to help survivors, have homes, even though it was not easy, but it took some time. And the funds mostly to give survivors who are, like my mother, for instance, my mother went back to teach. For someone like her, at least she was able to gradually be able to, do something, helping us and finding a place to live and all that. Gradually, before we got our own home again. We got to rebuild a new home again. So not every survivor was capable of, doing that because some of them didn't have the ability to do that. So they built, homes for survivors, especially women who survived, who have lost the entire families, women, widows, women who have lost everybody. And most of the time, they encouraged actually those kids who survived, those who are same age as me, even younger, encouraging people, especially Tutsis who were in exile, who came back in Rwanda, to bring even survivors, women too, survivors, to those who are capable, to have them in your home. It was not easy, but some of them were raised by different, people. And there were many instances where fellow survivors raised themselves. And the homes they were able to give somehow helped. Of course, it was really not easy. But the funds also was created also to help us go back to school again. So there was a fund that was created to help us going back to school, and whether in high school and college, university, continue to universities. And then also survivors who are in high school created organization. We have two organizations, a high school one and college, university. So those organizations actually are created to help each other. Within, organization, we created artificial families. And where I'm the same age as someone, but I could be a mom. And I could be someone, they can come to me and we help each other, advise each other. And this organization really, helped a lot of survivors because they helped us, through high school to cope with the whatever issues we're going through. At least you have each other. You have each other. And when even ending college, university, some of them were able to get married. If you get married, everybody will be behind you. So they will help you. Some of them will be on the groom side. Others will be on the bride side because many of them lost everybody. So no uncle to represent, no grandmother. So we have lost almost like every normal thing that you normally know, like having a grandmother. When you go to your grandmother's house, nobody has none. You go to your uncle's house, you don't have none. So you have to recreate those things within yourselves, within your peers. So, and my mother became almost like a mother for so many. And luckily, she was, I'm one of those people who shared my mother with everyone. So uh, she became like a mom to many. So I never, in our home, we always had people, survivors. So I always, whatever we had, a tea, anything, didn't matter what we had. So at least, we had to recreate normalcy, which was no longer existing. So, and somehow it helped, and we were very social. That helps a lot too, and probably that was one of the things that helped very much. Yeah. It's very unfortunate that we live in a world where what I've experienced it's still ongoing in some places. And whenever I share about what happened, I always remind people genocide is not something that happens overnight. So it's an ongoing propaganda and hatred, inciting words of hatred, and discriminating some individuals. And I think we have to see the signs. Like I mentioned earlier about 10 stages of the genocide, you see the signs before, to prevent such thing from happening. You have to prevent it early on. So whenever, you see people being discriminated against, you have to speak up, because it could lead to something bad, like a genocide. So in Rwanda, it was over the years before I was born. And I was born into that kind of thing. So to me, every time I think about, whenever I see any hatred or anything, I'm always afraid what will happen next. So, and asking myself, if anyone is aware of what they see, if they see such thing from happening anywhere. So it's so important to learn from history, and that's why Change is so good at educating about the history. When you learn from the history of what happened, it helps you to be able to prevent anything else from happening anywhere else. So, and I think for young people, I always, that's why educators, you have so much work to do, educating them to be aware of things, and teach them to not, fall into anything like that. So, and to me, I believe education is key to, prevent anything. So to me, education is key, and being aware. So that's why I share my story. I feel like I'm still young myself. I'm still living in this world. I don't want to continue to see anything like that happening. I want to make sure that we live in a world where we all see each other as human beings, and who even if we have differences, that doesn't mean you have to hate each other. It's you have to find ways to learn from each other, and because we are all human beings who loves to live in peaceful world, and I think it has to begin with us, and how we what do we educate our young people. And nowadays they learn from social media and other internet places, which is very tough and to control. And I believe education is key. Keep continuing educating our young people, and teach them to love one another, but not necessarily agreeing on everything, but love one another is the most important thing. Yeah.